UK, and we're working in the digital creativity labs and also an audio lab at the University of York. So yeah, as I mentioned, each of us are going to give a little bit of a talk, but there's really so much going on that it's really hard to kind of give justice to the range of work that's happening. So you're going to give kind of a few little samples rather than focus on one particular technology, and like a nice little bit of a tour around what's going on. But what I'd really do is encourage you to check out the lab's web pages, so digitalcreativity.ac.uk or audiolab.york.ac.uk, where you can see the full range of stuff that's happening. Because everybody's interest is a little bit different, and there's such a variety going on that I'm sure you'll find something fascinating for you there. So as mentioned, it'll take about 45 minutes, and then we'll have a bit of a time for Q&A. We're very happy to continue conversations over email or follow up and have extra meetings with people if that would be useful to you. So while I've got control over the screen, I'm going to just carry on talking in that academic way. And I'm going to hand over, I promise I will hand over to my colleagues at some point, so you'll get to hear about them. But I was going to talk a little bit first about some mobile projects. So I was thinking about the kinds of immersive technologies that are kind of useful to play on partners, and as well the risks of using new kinds of immersive technology in projects. We've kind of run into a lot of these issues before when we're dealing with mobile. In particular, the risk of the novelty of the immersive technology sort of overtaking the story or the other aspects to the experience that we carefully design. And that's a real challenge for creatives, I think, is to look at ways to use immersive tech to help engage the audience with the story rather than distracting them from the story. So yeah, here's a couple of quick little projects that we're sort of approaching this problem in a few different ways. A big one I want to talk about is Weaver. Weaver is a major esports project, actually, which is, so if you're familiar with esports, it is competitive computer games. So this is far more popular than you might first imagine. It looks a bit like this. So this was an event we were at a couple of years ago, where thousands of people go to these huge arenas and auditoriums to go and watch people play competitive video games. And so you can see them at the back there on the stage. There is 10 people and 2 teams of 5 playing, and then the rest of the audience. That car is the prize for the runner-up. The prize for the winners is hundreds of thousands of euros. So it's a very serious thing, and might not seem immediately related to theatre, but this idea of having the story and the events happening on stage and this auditorium set up with the audience, looking towards the stage will be very familiar. What we were looking at in Weaver was how to augment that experience for people in the audience. How can we give them something on a device that they can help get additional information about what's happening on the stage without overtaking it and becoming a distraction again. So I've got a little bit of a video so you can sort of see. It's very flashy and loud, so apologies in advance.
Let's get this grand final underway. The observer in the middle and gave me the information, and Nick was here to come out of the jungle. 5-6 minutes in, nice sentry went down by the room, so at least you can get rid of that ops. Punches it quickly with the tank.
Yeah, wow, that's so very 2015, the audio, but yeah, so I hope you could see. Although again it's aimed at a sporting kind of event, the way that the app is used to complement the story that's emerging on the stage and in the competition was what's really one of the really interesting aspects for us in that project. So yeah, there's more information at weaver.tv. Might not be immediately applicable, but this idea of supporting and enhancing an experience through a second device is really really interesting. It actually relates, the sports thing relates to another project. So I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but I've been working with a bando in Portugal, and they're doing a really, really exciting project around football. And yeah, so I don't want to give away any of the spoilers and make any secrets, but it's really fascinating because of the way that Abando are choosing to integrate the mobile device into the experience, because mobile is a very natural part of football spectating. When you go to a football match, you're surrounded by phones and by devices all the time, and so it fits really well with the story that's emerging there. Is that it's quite a natural environment to engage with the phone, and so Abando's football project that I'm sure you'll all hear much more about is integrating with that in really interesting ways. Concrete utopias. It's something I also wanted to touch about, which is this idea of stopping from looking down at the device and starting to engage more with the space around you. So I wanted to talk as briefly as I can about a couple of projects on this theme. So really understanding the place, this idea of place being important, and trying not to take the audience away from where they are, but rather trying to engage more with the space they're in and enrich the environment through the story. And so one example of this is a game I made several years ago now called Blowtooth, which is a mobile phone game that you can only play in airports. And the aim of the game is to smuggle virtual drugs through real airport security. So it only works in airports. It's programmed that way. And so this picture actually in the background is of London Heathrow Terminal 5 security with one of our players. And so this is the idea of using the environment as the game board. So the game on the phone enhances and makes the most of the environment you're in to make for quite an exciting and thrilling experience. So yeah, we can kind of think it as being sort of site specific maybe, but maybe it's a bit more like site generic, since it works in every single international airport and it doesn't work anywhere else by design. So that's the underlying tech that I've used there. I've used quite a bit, which is about understanding the sort of place people are in when they're using their devices. So yeah, whether it's an airport or, you know, we can determine whether you're in a street or at home or in a work environment, and then build the experience or adjust the experience based on the surroundings of the person to engage them with it there. So this example was from Get Lost Bot. So Get Lost Bot was a project I worked on with Honda, which is about, it's an adventure generator. So it's a robot that will send you mysterious treasure maps to locations near you. And it won't tell you where you're going, but you know that you're going somewhere similar to where you are. So if you're in a bar, it will probably take you to another bar, but somewhere that you've not been before. And so this idea is about generating these adventures and generating like experiences in the real world, and making a story layer over the ordinary environment that you're familiar with, but making it a bit more exciting. So yeah, it knows that you're in that place, and it creates that kind of canvas. So yeah, I've kind of rattled through a few examples, but I really wanted, the focus for me was about talking about how we use technology to enhance the story, but without distracting from the story. So how do we use the capabilities of the technology in creative ways, rather than being distracted and having the person looking at a screen or looking at a device the whole time. So in all of these examples, you're not looking down at your phone all the time, you're looking up. And so I kind of argue for immersive technology that is heads up and not immersive technology that is heads down. Great, so thanks for your patience listening to me. What I'm going to do now is I'll hand over to my colleague Helena, who's doing some incredible work with audio that I really think you'll enjoy.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me today. I'm going to tell you very briefly about a couple of projects that I think you might be interested in. So I'm based in the Audio Lab at York, and the Audio Lab, we are basically interested in sound in spaces. So that might be different types of sounds and how they interact with a space. We might be interested in modelling that sound for virtual acoustics, understanding how that sound behaves, how we perceive that sound, or how we might recreate it for a plausible immersive environment, for instance. I am particularly obsessed with the voice. So voice acoustics is my area, and in particular singing voice, not exclusively, but that's where my passion lies. And so the projects that I'm going to talk to you about today are singing related. So I take voice as a unique sound source with the variety of sounds that it can create, and I'm interested in not only how that behaves in a space, but also how voices interact with each other. So hold on to that in terms of storytelling, as I'll get to that in a moment. So why am I interested in this? So not only for understanding how our voices work and how our voices interact together when we sing together in order to promote the benefits of singing, but also to see how we can use the technology to create new creative ways of engaging different audiences, potentially with traditional singing performance such as opera, or indeed encouraging people to take part and explore using their voices in ways that they perhaps otherwise wouldn't have done. I've put 3 links in the chat because I'm very aware that over Zoom, all of my examples are going to probably appear to you in mono. And the importance of what I'm saying is that you're listening, hopefully in an immersive way. So ideally, after this presentation, after this meeting, you'll go away and have a listen to the links using headphones and exploring the interaction that I'm going to tell you about today. I'm going to take you back a few steps to the technology that we've developed in the Audio Lab that's specific to singing and is especially relevant during a pandemic. And that is our virtual reality choir. So we set out years ago to see if we could create a fully immersive experience that allowed people to sing as part of a choir if they couldn't actually be there. So that involves hearing and seeing the singers around you in the acoustic that you see them in, but also hearing yourself within that acoustic so that you actually sound as though you are singing with them rather than hearing yourself in your living room or wherever you are. So that was the kind of our first development, was this virtual reality choir. I'm going to play you a very short video clip of somebody singing. It's somebody singing where that microphone is that you can see on the right, on the picture on the far right of the screen. Hopefully you can see a microphone and a video camera. So what she's doing is she's filling herself back into a vocal ensemble. So it's a vocal quartet, and what she can see is the 3 singers around her, and she's filling in her part. So that was our first prototype. Since then, we've developed a system to work over headphones. So if you're lucky enough to have a VR headset, a little DPA microphone and decent headphones, then you can take part in that singing experience and you will sound as though you are there taking part with those singers. So using this technology, we then partnered with the National Trust, who were interested in whether they could take stories of spaces and share them through novel ways, essentially. And so we came up with quite a crazy project of taking a choir around summits in the Lake District in England, singing a song cycle on each of the summits, and we recorded them in VR and then installed this experience in Keswick Museum so that people can take part in the singing experience. So it's to kind of heighten the story of the spaces that the National Trust were trying to tell, but also enables people who otherwise couldn't either walk up a mountain or take part in a choir experience for whatever reason, they could do it in virtual reality. This was a really successful project, and from here we then partnered with Age UK and we created more material of singing outside to take around residential care homes in the UK, so that people who are essentially stuck in a building, they don't get out of their building very often because they are elderly in this case. We took the experience to them. So they put on their headphone and headsets, and 3 people can take part in the experience at once. So we can sync the experience so they can hear each other in the real space and the virtual reality version as well. And that's called Sing From Your Seat. And we've created a YouTube channel of that is interactive. So if you don't have a VR headset, you can still take part by putting on headphones, and you can still scroll around and you will hear that you remain in position in that choir. So the person to your left stays on your left while you can look around your environment by dragging the mouse around. So I encourage you to have a look at that after this meeting. We also have some concerts, some vocal concerts. So some people didn't want to take part in singing, but they did want to experience singing. And so they're just some 360 immersive concerts for them to take part in terms of watching as an audience member. We are now, and we already were working on this before the pandemic, but it's become rather more urgent, looking to see whether we can make our virtual choir real time over home networks. It's really easy to say that very quickly, not quite so easy to implement, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, just from the challenges of speaking over Zoom. So we've had 2 projects funded by XR Stories, an MSc by Research, which is finished, and we are now, I've just started a PhD with Opera North, and we are looking at trying to run masterclasses using our virtual reality system. So it's over a network similar to Zoom, but with bespoke software that allows us to reduce the latency, but then add the oralization in. So right now we could be in a cathedral and we would all hear ourselves positioned wherever we've chosen to be in that cathedral, for instance. We're trying to get the latency so low that we can perform naturally. So we're looking at 30 milliseconds. And if we think that teleconferencing software such as Zoom is aiming for less than 150 milliseconds, we can imagine the sort of challenge. But we are getting there. We've got a system working with up to 4 performers, depending on the distance that they are remote. And we're looking at now ways that we might use that creatively with Opera North. For instance, we're thinking about augmented reality community opera, depending on how far we get with this system. The other project I wanted to talk to you about is another collaboration with Opera North, also funded by XR Stories, and it utilises some of the technology that we also have in our virtual choir system. It was called Ghosts in the Machine, and it was connected to their 2020 production of Turn of the Screw by Benjamin Britten. Marion very kindly made an introduction between me and Opera North, knowing that that's where my passion lies, and we have more ideas than will keep us occupied for the rest of our lifetimes, that's for sure. But the first one that we went with was we were talking about how opera can use digital technology in a new way that might draw new audiences. So we were interested in the first instance of widening the demographic. So the big issue of inclusion in opera, and is there a way that we can use digital technology entirely differently? And we talked about the storytelling of opera being fundamentally about the oral experience, about the sound, whether you see that as the composition or the sound within the space in the auditorium. We wanted a project that could happen quite quickly, and considering the production workflows of opera, we couldn't do something on a stage because, of course, everything was within their production flow. So we came up with the idea of a trailer, so enticing people to the opera in a new way, using the interactive immersive audio. And so we created this trailer, which is almost like a piece of installation art based on Britain's Turn of the Screw. Again, I strongly encourage you to explore this by clicking on the link after this meeting. But you can see here a screenshot of the initial screen. We had a composer who wrote the composition using excerpts from the Turn of the Screw. We worked with a graphic design company, Illusion, and Opera North. We had to, because of the way that we designed this, everything that you hear has been multi-tracked in our anechoic chamber. So it was quite a labour-intensive project, but it's worked really well. And the idea is that as you watch this trailer, you can move around it in terms of the narrative. So you can skip to different scenes within it, but you can also mix the sound yourself and change your auditory environment. And the idea is that you kind of find the singers. So you will hear singing taking place. And if you hover your mouse over a singer or a particular part of the scene, then it will change the auralization of that voice in that space. So you may get an anechoic version of the voice where you hear only that voice in its pure form with none of the acoustics around it. Or you may hear that voice within a given space that we've auralized it within. I will play you a kind of a boring version of the trailer so that you can hear what it sounds like, but please go and have a go with interacting with it as well. That's the opening. I'm going to skip us to another part of the trailer now. Oh, she says optimistically. So there you can see that kind of ghostly figure. So you could drag your mouse around and you can see all the way around you in that environment, and it will change the positioning of the objects within the space. And then if you hover over that singer, then you will get a different mix of the voice within the mix of the sound. The trailer itself has ended up being quite long. I think it's about 6 minutes, but people dip in and out of it. And the idea is you choose which elements you're interested in. We published the trailer about a month, I think, before the opera was put on stage in Leeds. And at this point, just under 100,000 people have watched the trailer, which is beyond our expectations, and most of that traffic comes through kind of techie websites, so people that are interested in the technology. So we're quite thrilled by that in terms of introducing the sound worlds of opera to new demographics, which was kind of our intention. We also had a click now button, so you could book tickets to go and see the opera, and about 2,500 people clicked that button to go through to potentially buy tickets. They didn't all then buy tickets, but we have that data. So it was a huge success, and it's what we're working on now is where we go with this technology, but hopefully you can see there's lots of potential for breaking down the barriers of passive audience kind of response to live performance art, and we're trying to kind of work out ways of using audio as the main storytelling function of, in this case, opera, and digital technology to break down those barriers. So yeah, and if anybody has any questions for me, then please feel free to email after the meeting if it goes beyond the time frame. Thanks a lot for listening to me. Thanks.
So actually, Helena gave me a great cue. What I'm going to talk today about is storytelling with essentially recorded content with video and audio, and in a paradigm that we call object-based media. And I'm going to talk more about making such stories. So I'm going to take as a starting point branching narratives. I think you're all familiar with this concept when we talk about films or television programs that adapt to some viewer interaction. And this is the model that is essentially used in authoring. You start with a beginning clip, and then you think, okay, I may go there or there or there, depending on some choices made by the viewer. Then I may go there and there and there, depending on other choices. And this structure is easy to understand, but has a major drawback in that it explodes quite quickly. And if we only take a 30-minute long movie made of 3-minute long clips, and with 3 options from each clip, you end up on the last layer with almost 20,000 clips. But more importantly, they don't need to be all different, but they will be there. And more importantly, you have to define almost 100,000 connections. So I don't think anyone has appetite for something like this. So what do we do instead? What do people do instead? Well, they find some cunning ways of reducing the complexity of the story. They branch out and then they tame it and bring it back to a smaller number of clips, and then it grows again and it can shrink again. However, this is hugely constraining. So the creative mind, the storytellers, have to function within this constraint, and that's, we believe, not right. We want freedom of expression, and we want to foster that. So here comes our research. We stop referring to these as branching narratives, and we use instead another term just to kind of eliminate the bad history that interactive storytelling has through that label, branching. And let's call them non-linear narratives or interactive narratives. And I'm going to suggest here that we are able to provide for an increased structural complexity, but that's not the point. That's my techie voice. But my other mind, my creative mind, says, well, we're going to have a more versatile, a more flexible way of telling the stories that we want to tell. And I say we want, but it's actually more than that, because we don't know them yet. There's not that much history of interactive storytelling. So we need to discover what this medium is able of. And here comes our research. The paradigm is called object-based media. We work together with BBC to define it and to build technology for it. When we think about a story space, a story world, we don't think with the clips themselves. We work with objects, with some abstract representations of the clips. And an object could be anything, a video or an audio clip, a picture, a graphical element, an interactive element, a button, what have you. And what's important here is that objects can be combined in sequence, in time, as well as in layers at the same time on the screen and in the speakers. So we could overlap. The point is that the narrative, the
story worlds are going to have some more abstract representation. And the innovation is that we provide some structures that aggregate content that allow the human mind to engage with more complex narrative structures. And to give you an example, this is just syntactical. It doesn't have any meaning in terms of storytelling. Let's take what looks like a branching narrative. The green things are clips, say video clips, but the blue things are structures. So they in turn contain some elements in them. And let's take the first one. We call that a selection group. Don't worry what that is, but here is the content. It consists again of a number of clips and some other structures. So what I'm trying to illustrate here with this example, and it's going to go on a couple more pages, is the ability to combine and recombine these structures in crafting the stories. And to explain briefly the meaning here, you play the first clip in the story, then when you move on, you move into this container, and one object from this container will be selected to play upon some conditions, and then the story moves on. And let's assume that that object is this one here, this layer here. That in turn has its own structure, and then this object here in turn can have its own structure, and so on and so forth. So the point of this representation that we are supporting in technology is that it is not flat, it is three-dimensional, and it goes through layers. So each object encapsulates a narrative function, and then you develop it inside, and then you can have further narrative functions inside, and further and further and further. And this is awfully complex, and I think in the interest of time, I'm going to skip it, but this just shows how a story world represented abstractly like that will result at playout time in the editing list that a filmmaker would put together in post-production. And as the brief from Ben was to come up with some bits of technology, we have an authoring tool called Cutting Room, which went through a number of iterations as a research prototype. So it was rather flaky and not stable at all. And recently we paid the company a good amount of money to build a more robust tool, but playing with it, I realized that it's still a bit flaky. So it's still just a research prototype, and we need yet another version to make it into a more robust product, but it looks somewhat professional. It has a narrative canvas. It has here on the bottom the selection of video clips and audio clips and images and buttons that you work with. Here on the right-hand side, it has a property inspector that allows you to choose all sorts of characteristics for each element of story. This authoring tool or authoring environment is implemented in Unity, in the game engine Unity, but it provides you don't need to know anything about Unity. You just can work in this environment and build your own stories. An example here how the property inspector works. You know that in making such stories, you need to annotate the content with, you remember that probably you know the term tags or metadata. You need to say what the content of each clip is, and this tool allows you to do that. And I think the nicest innovation that we have is the ability to define structures. Here on the left, you see a selection group, and then by double clicking on that, you open up another narrative canvas and you define its inner content. I'll give you another example with a layered structure. Here, right at the beginning where the arrow is, you see a two-layer structure, and then they are opened up here on the right-hand side, and the content of each layer is defined then on its own canvas, and so on and so forth. So the more content you have, the more you can go in depth with this tool. And last but not least, the tool also has a preview function that allows you to see what you've authored so far and fix errors if there are any, or just enjoy if you've not made errors. And I have an example and a short clip of 1.8 minutes. If I could play it, Ben, or should I stop here?
I think it'll be okay.
So we've made a 20-minute, approximately 20-minute long interactive film called What is Love, with a production company from Yorkshire called Symbolism Studios. And we have distributed this as an exhibit at York Mediale, as streaming was rather complex at the time, and we couldn't do that. And here's just a taster of it.
They dumped me.
No, that's rubbish.
I know. Can you meet me?
Yeah, I can come out. I have time. I can't have a late one though. I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, see ya.
See, I'm off out for an hour.
I'll speak up now. 16. She's a dancer.
Yeah, I know, but I won't be long.
She's in love with someone who's a software developer.
I can't sleep.
Here he is, Jack. And their relationship is...
I just watched a rehearsal.
Over
you were out of time.
Internet by an intelligent agent called Z.
Could you even hear the beat?
Z takes recordings, so he's talking to Z now, and Z will convey the message.
Are we messing around here?
I forgot to...
Do you want to throw away everything that we've worked for?
Amelia. Now she's starting, and she's put Z on some kind of auto-response, and she's trying to hide the...
Amelia, where are you?
It's kind of guessing, and I'll leave
Are you
it to
out?
you now.
I can't believe you're up. Are you in a club? What the hell are you doing? Have you gone fucking insane, Amelia? You better go home. Good idea!
So this is what is new in this story. The story is clear, a bit of tension between Amelia and Jack, and Z, an intelligent agent, is trying to mediate between them, but Z needs and requires help from the viewer, and Z is also looking at the social media stream that is associated with Amelia's followers, and you are engaged to vote, to take part, and to express your thoughts on these decisions, and the rest is in question and answers. And here's a picture of the exhibit shown at York Mediale. The interaction was simplified. Viewers didn't send messages to Z, but rather voted by hovering their hand and choosing a particular feeling with regards to the posted messages. So that's a very rushed, and I'm sorry for the hiccup with the audio, but I'll stay here and we'll talk more about it in questions and answers should you have any. Thank you very much.
So I'm Mary Stewart-David. It's a thrill to be with fellow theatre makers from my desk in London, where I have been for the last year. I make musicals. I've worked traditionally in production as a writer, director, producer, mostly in the West End and a little bit of New York theatre as well. I'm now researching at York, looking at ways of taking musical theatre into the immersive arena. And because I'm physically not at York, I've gone online. Started with a Zoom play, didn't stay with that very long, and moved into web VR. I was introduced to that by a group of visual artists who were using web VR as an art gallery, an online art gallery. Now, I thought that web VR, you had to have one of these things, you know, a head-mounted display. But actually, it's not so. You can work perfectly well in a web VR system. It works through your browser, so you don't have to download it. You can work as an avatar in a 360 environment. You can collaborate with other people. You can do all the things you can do in Zoom, but you can do it in 3 dimensions, and you can do it all sitting at your laptop or even in some cases on your phone. There are a number of platforms that are available. I'm using a platform called Frame VR, made by Verbella. It's in beta, so it's flaky and unreliable. It's limited in terms of the amount of assets you can import and what you can do in it. But as a starter program for young people or people who are not too technical to make theatre, it's much better than Zoom in my view. And it's easy to use, and it's easy to show other people how to use it. So even if you don't use it for performance, you can use it for collaboration or for training. Most of the visual artists I started with in Frame VR have now moved on to building worlds in more sophisticated programs, still in social VR, but programs like AltSpace or VR Chat or Mozilla Hubs, where you can actually design your own immersive world. Now, there you are moving into the world of using a VR headset. Some of my collaborators in New York are moving towards a theory of playable theatre. You'll see that in my Wakelet link, which is it sits at the convergence of immersive theatre, narrative games design, 360 film, and as a surprise to me, LARPing, live action role play. If you don't know what LARPing is, I only just found out. And we're looking to investigate those 4 elements. We've got a hackathon coming up at York. Ben will provide further details. We haven't yet launched it, but we're actually looking at how you might put a musical in a web VR platform and make it playable. So we've got, I put in the Wakelet link some of the people that I've been working with and some of the inspiration that I've had with this and support. Most notably, I'm getting support from York, where I'm actually a PhD candidate, as well as all the other things I do. And as my supervisor is on this Zoom, I think I should give them a plug. It's been an eye-opening few months with my time at York. I've really missed physical theatre, but I've managed to replace it, at least for the time being, with a platform in which to express my creativity. And I've brought my musical theatre colleagues into Frame VR, and we've managed to recapture some of the issues that we were having with Zoom. We found a way of performing together and collaborating together. As I said, it's free. It's not the only platform, but it's the one that I like because I'm not super technical. And Ben will put you in touch with us, I think, if you would like a demo. The reason I'm not demoing it now is that you really can't do it with Zoom at the same time. But if anybody wants to investigate, I shall be delighted to induct you. A short induction, of course. And that's all from me.
Great, thanks, Mary. Mary, did you want to mention your Discord? Is that open for people to join?
I haven't got it to hand, actually. We're running on the Discord channel. I haven't got the links to hand though, Ben. But can I forward to this group just some details of the hackathon once we've announced it? We've got some amazing mentors who are going to help us with the 4 pillars. As discussed, the immersive filmmaking, games design, and we've got our own York LARPers who are going to join us. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, fantastic. So thanks, Mary. But yeah, also thanks to Mary and Helena as well for talking through our projects. That's the end of what we're gonna talk about today. So we'll be happy to. We've got a few minutes left for questions. If anyone has any, but as mentioned earlier, we're very, very happy to answer questions over email. Yeah, you know where I am. I can put you in contact with everybody else, and we're happy to arrange follow-up meetings if people want more information about what's in particular aspect. So thank you.